Ruslan.
Maul, Rory responding to Joe Budden. More details come out. There's a lot of teachable moments in here. I want to jump right in and open up with a verse from Proverbs. This is Proverbs chapter 18, verse 17. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. If you guys don't know the backstory with Joe Budden, podcast, Maul, Rory get fired, or at least Rory get fired. I think Maul went with him. And the way Joe Budden came out at first, and I covered it, I did part one of this, is he kind of just made them look like workers who had no business asking for accounting, asking for the particulars, where the money was coming from, yada, yada, yada. And then they responded, and gosh, did they respond with some heat. Full discrepancies before you go any further in this video. We don't know the contract, we don't have the contract, but as we're entering this new media phase where podcasts are now grossing 7 figures, where YouTube channels are now grossing 7 figures, there is a lot here that we can learn from. Joe Budden has already responded to them, and I'll adjust his response. And by the way, there was another response to Joe Budden today about accusations of sexual harassment. So this entire thing is just one big mess. But this is on their Vimeo. Shout out to them I don't think they saw my first video, which was just encouraging them to get ahead of this thing, right? Because this a lot of times in media is speed. You want to be first and you want to be clear. And I'm glad they responded as quickly as they did to the Joe Budden situation. But they put this on Vimeo/live streaming. The Vimeo gave them the opportunity to put it behind a paywall. Of course, it got bootlegged. So I'm going to refer you guys, if you guys want to see the whole thing, go watch there. I'm going to react to just a few clips. Just a heads up, there's going to be profanity in this live. So
hide your kids, hide your wife.
Explicit, explicit,
Explicit.
I do my best to remove and trim out the cuss words on the back end, but just want to give you guys that heads up. And if something slips through, don't get all religious on me about it. Okay, so I want to point out 3 different revelations from this podcast that I think are crucial to this entire discussion. This is the first part.
And this was the simplest contract on earth. This shit was very easy. It was not some crazy back and forth.
But according to him, we don't know what the contract. We're percentage based.
Yes.
Because I see.
So that's the first revelation here. The first revelation is the way Joe framed it is that they were work for hire 1099 guys. I pay you, you show up and talk, that's all you have. They are percentage based. They share in the revenue split. It's a revenue share situation. It is not a salary, which changes the conversation a bit. So I'm gonna play some more of this and they're gonna explain it.
See, the narrative is people think that we work for Joe and we're employees and we get a salary. That's not what it was. We have a percentage based contract.
And also people.
So we have to ask for accounting because how else will we know what we're supposed to get? We need to see the numbers. We get a percentage of whatever comes in for the podcast. I've seen a lot of people making, LeBron wouldn't ask Jeannie Buss for the books for the Lakers. I'm like, LeBron is a salary. He don't give a fuck what the Lakers make as long as he makes $50 million at the end of the year. He doesn't give a fuck what the Lakers make. But if he was getting a percentage, if he was getting 30% a year, he would need to know what the Lakers made that year.
Joe didn't frame it that way. His response to this, by the way, was they still don't know what the contract says. And just because he kind of alluded to this on his Instagram live, I'm not going to play it, but just because you are percentage based doesn't mean you have access to accounting. That was more or less his response, which sounds kind of wild to me. From my understanding of an artist signed to a label and has a percentage, regardless on how low that percentage is, that artist has the right to audit that label. And this happens all the time in the music industry. Artists audit their labels all the time. And Joe Budden's kind of positioning of it, we're like, well, just because you have a percentage base doesn't mean you get to ask me to look at my books. Sounds kind of like hogwash on Joe Budden's part when you really think about what a percentage based is and how do they figure it out.
You wanted to have conversations with as a rapper that would never talk to you. So I think that you starting to feel like this new person and you got this new leash on life, which is fine. I'm not even mad at that, but don't bring that energy.
Love that for my people.
You can have an ego with women and fans and all of that. Don't have no ego with your niggas that built something with you, that was in the trenches with you like I was.
Percentages are cool until the money gets really big. So initially, there's not a lot of money here. So let's just, we don't know what the percentage is. I think they should put out the contract, because I think that would be crazy. So let's just say Maul was making 15%, Rory was making 15%. Let's just throw that number out. 70% goes to Joe, right? That's fine until the checks go, you know, if the podcast is grossing, let's just say 100,000 a year, which is probably how they started, a couple sponsors, little things here and there. But, and yeah, I'm gonna chip you off 15K, I'm gonna chip you off 15K, we take the 70, boom. That conversation switches to when now that's $1 million, or now this is $5 million. Because when you start getting into the Spotify money, which they said they never knew how much truly came in from Spotify, that 15%, the actual gross on it becomes more. And maybe what happened is, and this is just my opinion, is one, maybe it is an ego thing, but I think what also could have happened is maybe Joe's overhead went up with the podcast. He started hiring more people. They said it was a staff of 30 people. He's trying to build this empire. And instead of keeping it lean, this man starts hiring more people, and now they're allotted this percentage, but he has to split his percentage with all these other people, Parks, his manager, so on and so forth. But at some point earlier on in the conversation, they said they were having a conversation. They were talking over dinner about percentage splits, and then Joe said, well, if we made that much, I wouldn't give y'all that much, which was like, whoa, that's crazy. You can't say it's a percentage split and then say I'm not going to give you that much because we gross more. Like, that just sounds wild to me. And this leads me to the most damning point here. This is by far consistent with his character, consistent with his integrity, and consistent to what we've seen him do at Complex and other places, Spotify, what have you, is this part right here.
I had a 3-hour FaceTime with Royce, and we talked about everything.
And I text Royce afterwards.
Royce is Royce the 5'9", Eminem's close friend. Royce, Crooked Eye, Joel Ortiz, Joe Budden were a group called Slaughterhouse. Slaughterhouse was signed to Eminem's Shady Aftermath Interscope at one point. They had some issues. Joe left the group first. Check out what he says about this interview he did and how it came out.
After you called me, and I thanked Royce.
He talked to me about a whole bunch of Slaughterhouse shit. He talked to me about a whole bunch of, and it was like, but I'm telling Royce, I'm like, fam, just in the way, again, he had to pull up with Crook. Never put it out.
I watched it.
Never put it out. But
it's a great pull up.
He said something in that pull up that when I saw it, it stuck with me. And when the shit fell apart with us, that shit played in my head. And him and Crook were talking about, Crook said something to the extent of, but bro, we have a contract with them. We got to honor our contract. We signed this. We agreed to this. We got to honor that. And Joe's response was, I don't give a fuck about no contract. I don't honor no contracts.
This is by far the most damning part of this entire conversation. So when you connect all the pieces, when you connect the thread saying he's going to break a contract with Interscope, Shady Aftermath, apparently that was a really good situation for them. He's had issues with all of his business dealings from Spotify to Complex, now with his own homies. And it sounds like, yeah, contracts are cool until I don't think they're cool. I get to do what I want. Here's the thing, the scriptures are clear about this, and I wish Joe operated from this paradigm. And it's not to say that, because Joe's not a follower of Jesus. There's followers of Jesus that get this wrong, right? And I'll give you an example. So Matthew 5, verse 33, again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Okay, so Jesus is talking about them making these wild, elaborate oaths, them doing all this over the top stuff. I swear, right? This is why we don't swear to God. You don't swear to something, or I put that on my grandmother's grave, right? We don't do that. And then he says, when it comes to dealing with people, you let your yes be yes and your no be no. Anything else beyond that is of the evil one. The scriptures are simple, very simple. Hey, you don't need to go out here and do this flamboyant oath and I'll do anything for you. And listen, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Be a person of your word. Be a congruent person of integrity. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be there. If you say these are the splits, honor those splits. You don't just honor those splits when it's convenient for you and it's only making 500,000 and you feel like, oh, it's cool, they'll make this much. And then that number jumps 10x and it's 5 million. And now, ooh, do I really think they're worth that? Because they weren't really whatever. I don't think their value is that. And so from Joe's standpoint, he goes on to say that he told him, hey, the new guys, I get both guys for half of what I pay you. And apparently when they did their best to like honor the splits got really good once they got to Patreon. Shout out to all our Patreon. You should become one if you're not a partner on this channel. Let me play that clip for you guys. This will be the last clip I play for you. So check this out.
He gets on there. We congratulate him for his position. Still love you, Joe, for getting that position. That's amazing. Patreon's great.
So this is when they went over to Patreon. Now, Patreon, the guys don't know, people give monthly to support their favorite creators. You should be a Patreon of ours if you aren't. When they got to Patreon, they started doing exclusive podcasts for Patreon. Here's the thing. They got to Patreon, and Joe not only did a Patreon, he also had an equity deal with Patreon. Why am I saying this? Because there's rumors and murmurs that Patreon is going to go public. When Patreon goes public, it's evaluated at $1 billion company. This could be Joe's biggest payday. So Joe gets some equity in Patreon just to go over there and be a Patreon like I'm a Patreon, but he gets equity in a company. This is big, and he got a position over there. What that means is that when Patreon sells for $1 billion or $2 billion, when they go public, they do an IPO, whatever the situation is, because they're getting venture capitalists. And Joe, let's just say he owns 0.5%. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars on top of what they're generating monthly. And apparently what they were generating monthly was a lot.
This is going to be the monthly fee for Patreon.
Yep.
Was the number crazy per month? Absolutely.
Good, great money.
It's a lot of fucking money.
Great money.
Lot of fucking money.
Mm-hmm.
So if they had 10,000 people giving $20 a month, it would be $200,000 a month off of Patreon that show could have been generating. And Rory and Mal could have been getting 50,000. That was the rumor. Let's just say it was 40,000. Whatever the number is, it's a lot of money.
When I see a lot of money, do I automatically think, oh, there must be more? No. I just ask, so what is this based off of? Because from my understanding, at this point, this was a Joe Budden podcast thing.
Mm-hmm. What his manager said.
Him and his manager, Ian, shout Ian. Again, I'm not here to assassinate anyone's character. I say to Ian, yo, I've been stacking my bread. I'm fine. People look overworked, and we're doing a lot of shit right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can just tell the morale is, I can just see it, that people are just overworked.
No. Patreon it wasn't seeing it. They expressed it to us.
It's not my place to say, even though they said
my place to say.
No, even though they said their place about me. I still don't return the favor when people do shit to me.
I'm saying it. People expressed that they were overworked and underpaid.
So I say to Ian and Joe, I don't care what narratives you spin, anything, whatever. I said to Ian, don't pay me this month or next.
So Rory takes one for the team.
Don't give me that amount of money.
I remember.
And that was a lot of fucking money.
Yeah.
I said, don't pay me. Let's put it into production. Let's put it into the guys. This is not about money to me. Let's keep this shit moving.
Right.
Like, I don't need this shit.
Right.
We could just stick to whatever contract. I don't need this. Like, I don't need it right now.
Because you even came to me with that. You was like, yo, we should, the first month Patreon check, we should both just give it to the guys.
Yeah.
Camera guys, Savon,
like,
Alex,
fam, these people,
Parks.
Everyone looks like they're working crazy.
Parks took Joe Budden's side in this whole thing.
Like, they're working crazy. Like, let's just give them that. Me and Ian have a great fucking conversation. I get a call early in the morning.
You're ungrateful.
Back to when you said you were talking to Joe. At this point, this was the first time in my life I said, who the fuck am I talking to? I wake up to someone screaming into the phone of how ungrateful I am.
Yeah.
How I don't give a fuck about anybody.
Yeah.
Any of this. And I'm like, what are you? Joe, I said, don't pay me.
Right.
And he's like, yo, you know, Patreon got has nothing to fuck to do with you. Fuck you. Fuck all this. This ain't just shit. Why the fuck you even talking about shit? I'm like, your manager called me in a payout for Patreon. I said, just give it to everyone else.
Right.
I don't know what the fuck you're talking
Thought
about.
you were being a stand-up, honorable guy.
The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. This entire situation, I think, is about a lot of growth really fast in uncharted territories like podcast, the new medium, without clear communication. Could they audit the books? Do they need to audit the books? And with someone that has a very problematic personality and history. I heard Joe's response, and, you know, again, was it in the contract that they could or couldn't audit the books? Hey, I don't know. Could he have been very generous with them and they asked to audit the books and he was just like, well, that's not in the contract, and exploded on them? That's what it sounds like it happened. Him exploding like that because of, maybe he was generous with them. Maybe he was keeping it a buck. Maybe everything was on the up and up. The bulk of this, it's not about sides. I think the bulk of the responsibility of this is going to fall on Joe. He's the leader. It's his podcast. It's his team. You said you were going to do something. You changed your mind about it. Did you not change your mind about it? You said it was a profit share. Now you don't want to do a profit share. The bulk of this is going to come back down to offense. Joe was offended and exploded on them for asking for reasonable stuff, whether it was technically in or not in the contract, because the man's repeatedly said, I don't follow contracts. Contracts are meant to be broken. So that to me is a very big character issue, right? We could talk a lot about, I know the latest phase is Kevin Samuels, high value men, all this stuff. High character, high morale, high integrity. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm not just going to do it when the bags get bigger. I'm not just going to do it when it costs me more. I'm going to do it because I'm going to honor you. Just being transparent and vulnerable. I don't have to be transparent, but if you're a Patreon of mine, there's a video of what I make a month that you guys can go and look up. And I don't have to do that with our Patreon community. You know what I'm saying? But I do that just because I want folks to know, like, this is where I'm at, and this is how I'm doing it, and this is where the revenue is coming from, right? And these are my goals. Those things help and protect you because it alleviates some of the confusion and the fog and where everything is going. You know what I'm saying? You don't owe anybody that, but you owe your team that. You owe your team that. They should have known what the Spotify deal was. They should have known what the Patreon monthly revenue was. They should know these things. It's not wild. Even if it wasn't in the contract, especially by someone who's telling you, I don't follow contracts anyway. I don't care about a contract. It's very incongruent and inconsistent. Should have been building their thing on the side the entire time. If you're gonna leverage someone else's platform to build your platform on top of that, always have your own thing building because you don't own that platform. Clearly, even if you have a profit split, they said we didn't own the IP of the Joe Budden podcast. They didn't own anything. They just had a profit split of percentages. If you don't own what you're doing, you need to build something that you're owning. Even if you like to work a job, even if you're cool with the 9 to 5, even if that's your personality type, still do something over here that you own equity in. Do something over here that you own equity in. And I think they're getting it now, and I think they're doing a good job with the Vimeo thing. You know what I'm saying? And by and large, like, yeah, definitely don't the friends and family business. That's a good point. Like, doing business with friends and family can get very murky. It can get very, 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 very murky in these types of situations. So it's like you got to be very clear, very transparent, very vulnerable, and even if you can do all that, and even if you err on the side of generosity, it could still get confusing because we have a natural tendency to feel entitled. Do you know what I'm saying? And it sucks. And I don't think anyone here was trying to hurt anyone, by the way. I don't think Joe was intentionally trying to hurt them. I don't think they were intentionally trying to hurt Joe. I think it was a lack of communication, lack of clarity, lack of transparency, compounded with a lot of money, compounded with maybe some personal rifts and some affiliations here or there. And you got this big explosion. So this is a huge learning lesson for a lot of you guys that are looking to get into the media space. plan this to build it right the first time. Like, build it right the first time. Even if you're gonna come together and do an album with somebody, do a podcast with somebody, do a YouTube channel with somebody, always have something on the side that you're building that's autonomous, because if this thing implodes, you can go over here and do your own thing. So this story isn't new. It's just new to podcasting. Story is not new. It's just new to podcasting. Think about that for a second. This stuff's been going on for decades. Rap groups breaking up, record labels breaking up, collectives breaking up. It's not new. It's new to this new media. And that's why it just looks so wild, because you wouldn't think this would, this would play out like this. So those are my thoughts. Guys, if you found this video valuable, hit me with the like. And by the way, we found out that over 51% of the people who watch this channel are not subscribed. If you could please click out, hit the subscribe button, turn the bell notification on. That would help us out a lot. Appreciate y'all.
Kingstream Entertainment. Ruslan.
I told him I want a blessed God. It means the kid that was least likely to succeed smashed through the middle class without finishing his degree. I still walk though in my cap and gown at the graduation ceremony. Got my picture with the dean. You can say that I finessed it well. Some thought that I would be quick to fail, but what they